You have cleaned your home 100 times, and somehow, within 2 or 3 days, it looks exactly the same. The counter fills up again. The sofa slowly collects things that were never meant to live there. The drawer you spent a whole hour organizing somehow becomes a mystery box within a week. And at some point, a quiet thought appears. Maybe I am just not the kind of person who can keep a home clean. But that thought is not true, and it is costing you more energy than you realize. The problem is not how often you clean. The problem is that nobody ever showed you a different way to think about it. Let me tell you something about many Japanese homes. The moment you walk into one, something feels different. Not because the space is larger, not because the people inside have more hours in their day. In cities like Tokyo, apartments are often significantly smaller than what most people in the West are used to. Work schedules are long and demanding. Daily life is full. And yet, many of those spaces feel calm, light, breathable, like the home is genuinely on your side rather than working quietly against you. The reason is not expensive storage systems or a natural talent for tidiness. It is 5 habits, small, quiet, daily habits that prevent mess from building before it ever has the chance to begin. By the end of this video, you will understand exactly why your home keeps returning to the same state no matter how much effort you put in. And you will have a system that actually works without depending on motivation, without waiting for a free weekend, and without starting over. Stay with me until habit 3, because most people hear habits 1 and 2 and feel like they already know them. Habit 3 is where the real shift happens. And if you leave before then, you will miss the piece that makes everything else work. Before we get into the habits themselves, one idea is worth understanding. Because without it, these habits will feel like another list of tips. And tips alone rarely change anything for more than a week. In Japan, there is a concept called mottainai. Most people translate it simply as do not waste, but the fuller meaning is closer to this. Every object in your life carries some kind of value. And when you hold on to something that no longer serves your life today, you are not being careful or responsible. You are carrying weight you never consciously chose to carry. Take a moment and think about your own home. Honestly, how many things are sitting somewhere right now that you have not actually touched in 6 months? Not because you need them, but because deciding what to do with them felt harder than simply leaving them where they were. That feeling, that quiet, invisible heaviness that sometimes follows you through a room, is not really clutter in the physical sense. It is unfinished decisions. And a home that holds unfinished decisions all day, every day, never quite fully rests, and neither does the person living in it. This is one interpretation of how the mottainai philosophy applies to the home. Not as a universal Japanese rule, but as a personal lens, a way of asking, honestly, whether each object in your life is earning its place. And that question leads directly into the first habit. Habit 1. Let go of what your home no longer needs. Walk into one room right now, just one, and look around with genuinely honest eyes. How many things in that room would you actually miss if they quietly disappeared tomorrow? Not the things you use regularly, not the things that clearly belong. The other things. The box in the corner that has moved twice but never been opened. The items on the shelf that have not shifted in months. The things you are keeping for a future version of your life that has not arrived yet, and honestly, may never arrive. Most of us hold on to objects because making a decision about them feels harder than leaving them where they are. One more day, one more week, and then one more after that. But here is what that quiet avoidance actually costs. Every object your eyes land on that does not have a clear purpose registers somewhere in the back of your mind as an unfinished task. You do not feel it as one large, heavy thing. You feel it as a low background hum that follows you through the day without ever fully identifying itself. That is why some people sit in a room that looks reasonably clean and still feel a kind of low stress they cannot quite explain. The objects are not just occupying physical space. They are occupying mental space, too. A Japanese-inspired approach to this asks one simple question of every object. Does this belong in my life today? Not eventually. Not maybe one day. Today. If the honest answer is no, the object is released, donated to someone who will actually use it, recycled. Let go with intention rather than guilt. Try this with one drawer this week, just one. You will notice something that might surprise you. The room does not just look lighter, it genuinely feels lighter, because the unfinished decisions are resolved, and your mind can stop quietly carrying them. Habit 2. Give every object one address. Let me ask you something simple. Where is your phone charger right now? Can you answer that without looking? Or are 2 or 3 different locations coming to mind at once? Here is what is actually happening in most homes. Objects do not have addresses. They have general areas. And objects that live in general areas spend their entire lives wandering. The charger starts in the bedroom, ends up on the kitchen counter, finds its way to the sofa cushions. You spend a few minutes looking for it most mornings, without ever consciously registering those minutes as lost time, because it happens in small pieces. 2 minutes here, 3 minutes there, never enough to notice in isolation. But across a year, those small pieces become something genuinely significant. Think about how much of your daily energy goes into locating things that should already have a known location. Keys, scissors, the remote, your glasses, a specific document, a child's school form that was definitely somewhere. A Japanese-inspired approach to this is almost uncomfortably simple. Every object gets one permanent address, one specific place where it always returns after being used. Not approximately there, exactly there. The keys live on one hook, not near the door. On that specific hook, the remote lives on one specific surface, not somewhere on the sofa, on the tray on the coffee table. The scissors live in one section of one drawer. Always. When everything has a single fixed address, searching stops. And searching is one of the most invisible but consistent drains on daily energy that most households never account for. Imagine a family where no one ever asks where the scissors are. Not because they have exceptional memories, because the scissors always go back to one place. And everyone in the home has learned that place. Your home can work exactly that way, but only if you decide, deliberately and specifically, where each object lives. Not approximately, exactly. Start tonight. Choose 5 objects that regularly wander. Give each one a permanent address. Return it there now, and every time you use it, complete its journey back to that exact location before you move on. Within a week, those 5 objects stop being something you search for. They simply are where they are. And that small certainty, repeated across dozens of objects over time, begins to change the feeling of the entire space. Habit 3, the one-touch rule. This is the habit that changes everything, and it is also the one that feels the most counterintuitive when you first hear it. Here is what happens in almost every home, almost every single evening. You arrive home after a long day. The bag goes down by the door. The keys land on the counter. The jacket gets draped over the back of a chair. The shoes end up somewhere near the entrance, but not quite on the rack where they belong. The phone lands on the coffee table, and you sink into the sofa with the thought, I will sort all of that out a bit later. Later rarely arrives, because by the time later comes, you are tired. Something else needs attention, or you simply move past the pile without thinking about it. And the next morning begins with navigating small leftovers from the night before. The one-touch rule is built on one straightforward idea. When you pick something up, you complete its full journey before you set it down. The jacket does not go on the chair. It goes on the hanger. One motion, finished. The keys do not land on the counter. They go on their hook. One motion, finished. The shoes go onto the rack. One motion, finished. Each of these actions takes between 5 and 30 seconds. That is the actual time required. Not a minute, not 5 minutes. Between 5 and 30 seconds per object. But here is why most people do not naturally do this. In the moment, putting the jacket on the chair feels faster. And it is faster, by roughly 20 seconds. But those 20 seconds, saved now quietly, become 20 minutes of effort later. Because one jacket on the chair becomes a habit. The chair becomes a regular staging area. The staging area becomes a surface. And the surface becomes part of the weight of the room. Think of it this way. Every time you set something down somewhere, it does not belong. You are creating a small task for your future self. Every time you complete the journey in the moment, you are giving your future self a small gift. Let's imagine someone, let's call her Emmy, who used to spend Sunday evenings doing what she thought of as a reset, an hour or two of returning her apartment to the state it was supposed to be in. She did not experience it exactly as a burden, just something that needed doing before the week could properly start. After practicing the one-touch rule consistently for a few weeks, those Sunday evenings changed. Not because she had less to do overall, because she had stopped creating the pile in the first place. The reset shrank from 2 hours to 30 minutes, then from 30 minutes to almost nothing. The apartment had not changed. The habits had. Start with one category, just one object whose full journey you will complete from today. Your shoes, your jacket, your keys. Let that one small commitment show you what becomes possible before you add anything else. Habit 4. Create a reset moment at the entrance. Something happens when you walk through your front door that most people never pay attention to. Your body arrives home. Your mind does not always come with it. Your body settles onto the sofa, but your brain is still somewhere in the day, still in the meeting that ended an hour ago, still in the traffic, still turning over the conversation from lunch that you cannot quite let go of. And that invisible carryover is one of the reasons some evenings at home still feel heavy, even when nothing is technically wrong with the space itself. Many traditional Japanese homes include a space called a genkan, a small entry area that physically marks the boundary between the outside world and the inside one. You remove your shoes before crossing into the home, and in doing so, something beyond floor cleanliness happens. Your nervous system receives a small but real signal. That chapter of the day is finished. This one is beginning. You do not need a traditional genkan to experience this effect. You need a ritual, a consistent, small action that happens every time you come home, that tells your body it is allowed to shift gears. Here is a version that many people find genuinely effective. Before you enter your home fully, pause at the door, just for a moment. Take one slow breath, remove your shoes, and place them where they actually belong. Put your keys on their hook, and then, only then, step fully inside. That pause is not wasted time. That pause is a transition, a deliberate signal between two different states of your day. Many people who develop this habit describe the evenings changing in ways they did not fully predict. Not dramatically, but noticeably, because they are actually arriving home, not just moving their body from one location to another, while their attention remains scattered across the rest of the day. Your home should feel different from everywhere else you go, not just because of how it looks, because of how it actually feels to be inside it. That feeling has to be created, deliberately, through consistent, repeated rituals. And the entrance is the natural place to begin. Habit 5. Clean the moment, not the accumulation. Here is the most honest question about how most people actually clean their homes. When do you do it? If you answer honestly, for most people, The answer is some version of when it gets bad enough, when the kitchen counter feels overwhelming, when someone is coming over, when the mess finally crosses some invisible line that demands attention. And then cleaning becomes an event, an entire morning dedicated to it, a whole Sunday afternoon. Something exhausting enough that you need to recover from it before the week begins. A Japanese-inspired approach to cleaning looks at the problem differently. Many homes that maintain a consistent sense of calm do not stay that way because the people inside them clean more frequently. They stay that way because they never allow the accumulation to reach the point where a major cleaning session becomes necessary in the first place. This is sometimes called micro-cleaning, and it works the way small, consistent habits always work. The effort is small. The return is disproportionately large. Here is what it actually looks like in practice. You finish your morning coffee. Before you move on to the next thing, you wipe the counter. 20 seconds, you use the bathroom. Before you leave, you wipe the sink. 15 seconds, you finish cooking dinner. While the surfaces are still easy to clean, a quick wipe across the stove. 30 seconds, you fold your laundry. Each item goes directly where it belongs. No intermediate pile on the bed or the chair that will sit there until the weekend. None of these feel like cleaning. They feel like finishing something, because that is exactly what they are. The difference between cleaning as an occasional large event and cleaning as a quiet, daily rhythm is the difference between managing a fire after it has grown and never letting it start. Let's imagine Emmy again. She used to describe her home as always slightly behind, always in a state of catching up, always a few tasks away from feeling settled. After building this habit into her daily routine, that feeling changed, not because her apartment looked dramatically different from the outside, but because nothing was ever allowed to accumulate to the point where it demanded a whole session to address. The home began to feel like it was keeping pace with her life, rather than lagging behind it. One honest note worth adding here: these habits do require time. A few seconds here, a minute there, sometimes a little more. But what they replace is significantly larger in both time and energy. The 2-hour Sunday reset. The motivation required to face an overwhelming kitchen. The low background weight of a space that never quite returns to calm on its own. The exchange is genuinely worth making, but it is still an exchange. Small, consistent investments now for a much larger return over time. And now, when you put all 5 habits together, something important becomes visible. Now, let us bring all 5 habits together. Because when you look at them as a connected system, rather than 5 separate ideas, something important becomes visible. Each of these habits addresses a different layer of how a home accumulates weight. The first removes the objects that no longer belong. The second ensures that everything remaining has a fixed and known location. The third prevents new disorder from forming in the first place. The fourth creates a genuine boundary between the pressures of the outside world and the calm of the inside one. And the fifth ensures that small messes are addressed immediately, rather than allowed to grow into large ones. Together, these 5 habits do something that no single cleaning session can achieve. They change the relationship between you and your home. Most people experience their home as something that requires management, something that drifts toward disorder unless effort is regularly applied, something that has to be fought back into shape on a regular basis. What these habits create, gradually and without drama, is a home that holds its shape. Not because the space is perfect, but because the daily rhythm prevents the drift from ever gaining momentum. This is worth sitting with for a moment. Think about how much of the stress you associate with your home is not actually about the mess itself. It is about the gap between what the space looks like and what you want it to feel like. The distance between the current state and the imagined one. That gap produces a background tension that most people carry without ever naming it. The slight heaviness when you walk into a kitchen that needs attention, the quiet friction of starting a morning in a space that feels like it is already behind. These 5 habits close that gap. Not all at once, not dramatically, but consistently. Over days and weeks, the gap between the current state and the desired one shrinks. And as it shrinks, something shifts. The home stops feeling like something you are managing and starts feeling like somewhere you are actually living. Let's think about what that means in practical terms. When you let go of what your home no longer needs, every remaining object has more room to breathe. The space feels less crowded, even if the square footage has not changed. When every object has one address, you stop losing things. And stopping the search for misplaced items is not a small gain. Over the course of a year, it can return hours of your life. When you practice the one-touch rule, the daily reset shrinks from something that takes a large part of your Sunday to something that happens almost invisibly throughout the week in 30-second increments. When you create a moment of transition at the entrance, your evenings can genuinely change. Not because the home looks different from the outside, because you are actually arriving in it. And when you clean the moment instead of the accumulation, the weight of a space that is always slightly behind begins to disappear. None of these results are dramatic. None of them happen overnight, but they are real, and they compound. The most honest thing that can be said about Japanese-inspired home habits is not that Japanese homes are perfect, or that every Japanese household follows the same principles. That would be an oversimplification. What can be said is this: a different way of relating to your home is possible. One where the space works for you rather than against you. One where staying organized does not require constant motivation or waiting for a free weekend. One where calm is not something you occasionally achieve after a massive cleaning session, but something the space gradually tends toward because of the way you live in it. That is what these 5 habits build toward. Quietly, daily, without drama. So here is where to begin. Not with all 5 habits, with one. Choose the one that speaks most directly to the problem you are actually experiencing right now. If your home feels heavy, with things that no longer belong, start with habit 1. Choose one drawer. This week, just one. If you spend significant time looking for things, start with habit 2. Choose 5 wandering objects. Give each one a permanent address tonight. If your evenings consistently end in a pile of things left for later, start with habit 3. Choose one object whose full journey you will complete from today. If you arrive home and feel like you never quite land, start with habit 4. Create one small ritual at the door that separates outside from inside. And if your home never quite feels clean despite regular effort, start with habit 5. After your next coffee, wipe the counter before you move on. Just once. See what that feels like. You do not need to transform your entire home this weekend. You do not need to buy anything. You do not need to throw away half of what you own. And you certainly do not need to become a different person overnight. You only need to change one small moment. Then another, because a peaceful home is rarely created through one enormous effort. It is created through hundreds of tiny decisions that quietly become your normal way of living. And perhaps that is the most important lesson here. The goal is not to spend your life cleaning. The goal is to create a home that does not constantly ask you to clean it. A home where things have a place, where unnecessary things are allowed to leave, where small messes are finished before they become large ones, where the moment you walk through the door feels like a genuine arrival, and where your space gives something back to you instead of constantly demanding something from you. One habit, 1 week. Then we will talk. If you want to continue exploring the practical ideas and quiet philosophies behind how many Japanese homes are lived in, subscribe to Japanese Wisdom. Every week, we go a little deeper into the habits, the principles, and the daily practices that can help create a life that genuinely feels calmer. Share this with someone who has been trying to stay on top of their home and finding themselves back at the same point every few weeks. There may be something here that finally makes the difference for them. You are welcome.